Thanks, Tim, and thanks for having us on the program. I'm pleased to present today on behalf of Atomo. Our CEO and founder, John Kelly's in the US, attending a number of conferences and customer engagements. So I'm stepping in, and also because we've just released our FY22 results, so I'm in a position to provide an update on the financial results for the year, as well as discuss a little bit about where we're heading for FY23. If we could move on, I just wanted to talk about some of the key value drivers behind the business. I think if we go back to the foundation of Atomo and think about where the people in the business came from when they set it up, the focus was very much on bringing a user focus to a very traditional industry that had been dominated by labs and dominated by a very traditional and incumbent kind of approach to diagnostics, and thinking about how testing could be done at home, in remote settings and with untrained users, and still be effective, still be efficient, and make that user experience significantly better. So that's how the company started, and that's been the kind of innovative approach that they've taken to diagnostics during that early R&D phase. We've since moved into full commercialization of that with a number of patent protected products, and through that took the company to IPO in 2020. We're in a very strong financial position. We've obviously had a big couple of years since listing, with COVID, the pandemic impacting both positively and negatively for the business. And I guess at the same time, we've had the technology's been validated by OEM customers coming on board, and also regulators approving the products. We've substantially installed our capacity for production, so we're now able to do up to 18 million units of production a year. So our capital spend is largely complete. Funds from IPO were deployed to do that. And I think the other significant change as a result of the pandemic is that the market has accepted rapid testing as something that can be done in a home environment and in a decentralized setting. And I think everyone on this call has probably done a rapid test by now. I'll be very surprised if they haven't, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, it was less common and less well understood by end users. If we could just go on to talk about the company itself, we're headquartered in Sydney. I've got a production facility in South Africa. As I say, a global business. We've established a business development presence in the US and in the UK. And really over the last couple of years, we've been focused on responding to the pandemic, building out our production capacity, but also, I guess, continuing with our core business in R&D and design and around rapid diagnostic tests. We could move on to the next slide, please. So in terms of key achievements for the year, we've completed that industrialization of our production facilities. Here in Australia, we have a patent protected blister machine that produces the blisters that are a core component of one of our rapid blood testing platforms. So that's been fully validated and ready for full production. And we've also expanded our production capacity of our cassette devices. So we can either sell them into the OEM market, where other diagnostic companies put their tests on those platforms and take them to market, or we can produce our own finished products with those devices, such as our HIV test that we produce at our facility in South Africa. So we're now ready to go and expand rapidly as demand requires it. We obviously were impacted by COVID, and in Australia in particular, that came a little later than it did in the rest of the world, and we responded to that by obtaining TGA approvals for both the COVID-19 rapid antibody test and a COVID-19 rapid antigen test for professional use, and we have been selling those in substantial numbers. More than 1 million of those were sold over the period, the FY22 period, and that's been extremely helpful for us. Obviously, we're keen to respond to the pandemic and provide that service, but also it's been extremely helpful for us as a company, because we've made significant sales, more than $10 million in sales during the year. And that's enabled us to continue to push forward and build a cash buffer and a runway into 23 and 24, while some of our other business development was delayed as our customers and potential customers were also impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and directed their attention to responding to that. As I say, we've established ourselves in the US. We've actually put a corporate structure in place there and established bank accounts and so on, and hired that senior business development resource and built some really strong relationships on the ground there for manufacturing and production, and are in the process of expanding out our business development partnership engagement there with potential customers. I guess what we've also been doing is moving beyond blood-based testing. So the initial platforms that Atomo's developed are for rapid blood testing. Obviously, during the pandemic, it was predominantly swab testing for rapid antigens. So we've been working on that in the background. The team's been coming up with all sorts of innovative solutions to swab-based testing, and we have a device in pilot production stage for that particular device, which is very exciting. And we debuted that recently at a conference in the US, and it received a very positive response from the market. Importantly, as I say, a very strong balance sheet position at the end of the year that gives us the funds we need to go into 23. And we're really redirecting those efforts to emphasise business development activities and marketing now that that production and manufacturing installation is complete. Just coming now to the profit and loss for the year. You can see on the right-hand side there, as I say, Atomo spent the first 8 or 9 years of its life going through that R&D process, and really only started to commercialise in FY19, where we did around $500,000 in sales. In FY20, we did more than $5 million. In FY21, we did nearly 7. And then I'm pleased to report that we've more than doubled that this year to $14 million in total revenue from customers, for an all-in gross margin of around 42%, and improved our underlying EBITDA position by 23% as a result. Our gross margin is obviously impacted by the product mix. More COVID testing at slightly lower margins has brought the margin down somewhat. And also our HIV sales have increased in global health where margins are a little bit lower. But obviously at the top line level and at the gross profit level, we've contributed additional funds to the company to enable us to move into the new year in good shape. I guess when combined with our income from the R&D rebate, that's taken our total revenue over $15 million, more than 1 million COVID tests sold over the course of the year, and more than 500,000 HIV tests sold throughout the year. Just moving on to the impact that's had on our balance sheet. As I say, we finished the year with around $13 million in cash and debt-free, puts us in a very strong position relative to some of our peers and others in the market at this relatively early stage, only 2 years post-listing. So we're very pleased about that. Balance sheet's in good shape. We have some inventory there, which is related to COVID stock that was purchased in the last quarter. So we'll obviously be selling that as we move through FY23. And we've also entered into a new supply arrangement for COVID-19 rapid tests with a company called All Test that we announced earlier in the week. So we'll be selling their self-test in the market here in Australia, and also taking that product to the TGA for approval as an Atomo branded test. Just move on to the cash flow. Just a quick bridge on the cash flow. We started the year with $18 million, more than $16 million in cash receipts from customers, which is extremely pleasing. Another $1.8 million came in from the R&D rebate. And we've used that funding to run the business, to purchase stock, and as I say, to close out that capital investment across the production side, and also to continue to invest on the R&D side. R&D investment for the year across both profit and loss and across the balance sheet was more than $2 million. So as I say, we're continuing with with the core activity of the company, which is coming up with innovative rapid test device solutions. If we just take a step back to our strategic focus, we've shared this with the market a number of times, and I guess just to re-emphasize that that's really what this business is all about. It's about the core capabilities around device design. It's about thinking about things differently and thinking about them from the customer's perspective. And there's a bunch of components and patents and IP that go behind all of that thinking to produce something that ultimately is simple for the customer to use and delivers a top quality diagnostic result with a minimal amount of errors. And that's really what the company's all about. So we then approach the market in 3 different ways with those devices and the components, which is obviously a focus on infectious disease testing, particularly HIV and obviously COVID in the last couple of years. Selling our devices themselves to other diagnostic companies. So NG Biotech, for example, who have a rapid pregnancy test, is one of our customers. So we sell the device to them, they put their pregnancy test on it and take it to the market. And then increasingly focused on consumer health and wellness markets where there's a huge growth in opportunities for us. If we could just move on to the next slide. Just to expand on that, there's been a significant change in acceptance of rapid testing, as we discussed at the beginning of this presentation. We've seen that landscape shift significantly because It had to. The pandemic drove that. Regulators have now accepted that people can do this type of testing at home. And as a result of that, there's been a lot of investment going to the sector, a lot of awareness, right across the market about rapid testing, about at-home testing. And that is very helpful for Atomo. It obviously puts us in a great position where our consumer-focused and user-focused approaches to rapid tests are really, really important. And our customers have the opportunity to get regulatory approvals for at-home tests that they wouldn't otherwise have got if they didn't have the usability of the Atomo device. If we could move on, please. So just to reiterate that point, the estimates on the rapid diagnostic, the size of the rapid diagnostics market, up to $50 billion by 2025, and a lot of transaction activity, a lot of investment activity in the sector, and general market sentiment is a significant tailwind for Atomo. If we move on to the next two slides, we're really talking about our customer base here and our go-to-market strategy. So we're really engaging with our OEM customers to show them the utility of our devices and how they can help them differentiate themselves from their competitors. And if we move on to the next slide, we're also expanding our finished product set beyond HIV and COVID into other areas, and looking at launching our own pregnancy test, particularly into the North American market on our platform. That's a priority for us. And following on from that, other tests, vitamin D, thyroid, and semi-quantitative tests that involve our Atomo app for reading the outcome, and also integrating with other reader systems. We can move on to the final slide just to reiterate the strategy and where we're going for FY23. We're really switching that focus away from producing, from manufacturing and production capacity to business development and market-facing activities. We're scaling up engagement with our OEM customer base. We're moving towards production of more finished products. And I guess with that, we're focused on building out our product offering more broadly, and very pleased to finish FY22 in a position to be able to execute on that strategy with a strong balance sheet and good runway going into the new year. Tim, happy to take some questions.
Thanks, Will. You've been at the coalface this year, that's certain. Now, the COVID test revenue has obviously contributed greatly to your recent revenue. If that slows, which product do you think picks up the slack?
Yeah, interestingly for us, COVID's been a defensive mechanism in some ways, because when our customers are distracted by the pandemic because there's been another wave or another variant come through, we've been able to sell more tests ourselves in the COVID market. As that slowed down, we've seen those customers come back to us and say, okay, we need to do other things beyond COVID. You have a unique differentiated product. We can work together with you to bring other products to market. And particularly now that those customers have installed significant production capacity of their own, they're looking for other ways to use that. So in some ways, there's a natural hedge between our COVID sales and sales of our other products and our device sales under the OEM banner.
There's a question here in terms of a new HIV test. It's priced at $1. How will Atomo kind of plan to meet this challenge?
Yeah, look, global health's an extremely competitive market. And obviously, we're very pleased that that access to HIV testing is expanded by these low price points and by lots of production being available. Our price point is very close to that. And in global health, what you need to do is you need to get World Health pre-qualification. You then need to go to each individual country and register your product. And we're well through that journey. So that gives you an established position in countries internationally that can't be replicated overnight. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is obviously that emphasizes the need to have other products in other markets as well, so that our overall blended product mix still maintains strong gross margins. And that's the business's strategy.
And just one last question, Will. What does a typical licensing deal look for in regards to Atomo's technology?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We've explored, different structures from that perspective. We're not going to be manufacturing billions of devices. So at certain volumes, it makes sense for people to license our technology from us. We're not at that point yet. We're manufacturing our own devices and selling them to other people. But certainly at a point in time with volume, we would expect licensing deals to be a solution to that volume challenge. And we look forward to that, because that obviously sets us up for sort of long-term annuity income through that kind of stream, at zero capital. So that's an ambition for us over time. We're not there yet, but we certainly expect to be at some point in the future.
Great. Well, there's some more questions I'll send through to you. Thanks for your time. Have a nice weekend.
Thanks for having us, Tim.